Polypede Works here, and we have SBS 109. So here's what's funny. The first thing we have to talk about is the warlord that Ace defeated back in the day. I thought it was that giraffe guy that we see in his manga by the guy who did Dr. Stone. However, I was really close. It's weird because I was so close, but I was off. Because the guy that Ace defeated is a Zoan, like the giraffe guy. But he is particularly interested in ancient Zoan devil fruits. His name is Hanafuda, and he's a bit of a tall lad at a whopping 514 centimeters. His nickname is King of Lizards. So, this is the fourth lizard-themed warlord that we have in the series, because, we have Crocodile, Gecko Moria, because that's the thing that people forget. His name is Gecko Moria, even though he has an affinity for bats, which is probably an Oogie Boogie reference for Nightmare Before Christmas. If you know, you know. But his name is Gecko Moria, even though he only has like one gecko-themed attack, which he does on Oris Jr. in Marineford. His name is Gecko Moria. Then you have Boa Hancock. A boa, of course, is a snake. And I think the pun was supposed to be like back in the day, there was a woman in like a pink dress with a big yellow boa constrictor around her neck. I guess the theme was that she was wearing a boa like a boa. But that's no longer the case because Solomon never is around Boa's neck. He's just like a big, I guess, albino boa constrictor. So, yeah. And then you have Hanafuda, who is called the King of Lizards. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is that his name is Hanafuda. Hanafuda is a type of play card, which makes him very similar to Kaido and all the people in his organization. I don't know where that goes though, because Hanafuda are a type of card. They are a card game, like how all the Flying Six are named after. And I think some of the headliners are all card games as opposed to types of cards. Because I know the card suits, even though I guess it's still on brand because he's associated with Kaido, that belonged to Doflamingo. Because you had Heart, Club, Spade, Diamond, a Joker. But here, he's a weird outlier. And then, of course, being associated with ancient Zoans. Now, thanks to Mr. Bushido, a member of my Discord, The Digital Burrow, he brought up something very interesting. This could be the father of Page 1 and Ulti. And it's very funny that he brought that up because I'm looking at the weapons that he's being depicted with here. It's a sickle attached to a flail. Now, flails can also be referred to as types of morning stars. Ulti is wielding a golden morning star as she's fighting with Yamato, because Yamato and Kaido have kanabo, they have clubs. So that's not really a morning star in the traditional sense, because a morning star in that way would still be the end would be a bar with spikes coming out of it. But with them, it's a full baseball bat like club. So not really a morning star, but Ulti has something that would be more appropriate to be called a morning star. Now, what Mr. Bushido also said, and I was coming to the same conclusion because I had these thoughts about Yamato a while back. I think he might be the T-Rex. I think this guy might have the dragon fruit model Tyrannosaurus Rex. I think that's a possibility, and it will be really cool. And based on Kaido knowing their father, it would be really on brand for this guy Hanafuda to give Kaido the idea to hunt for ancient Zoans. And that's why he was doing that in the first place. Because so far, Kaido is a very unoriginal character in terms of his thinking process. Because as you know, Big Mom gave him the fish fruit model Azure Dragon. So he got that at God's Valley from her, as she stole it from a child Ivankov, right? So then you have this guy potentially who was probably in his entourage before King, I would think. And he gave him the idea to hunt for ancient Zoans because maybe as a ancient Zoan fruit collector, he knew a little more about them than Kaido did. So that's why he was interested in them. Because furthermore, I would say the only type of devil fruit that we haven't got into, and I talk about this in the dragon video, because I think Monkey D. Dragon is probably an ancient Zoan as well, like he's an actual dragon. But I think there's going to be a big to-do about ancient Zoans. And I've also said too, and we'll talk about them in a little bit, but I think Jupiter out of the Gorosei, if they are all Zoans, which that seems to be the case just because there's two Zoan-like in their transformations and abilities, but Jupiter seems to be the odd man out because he's the only Gorosei that doesn't have a fruit that's some sort of Asian mythological creature. He is a sandworm. And I could believe a sandworm, even though that's like a D&D monster, I could believe a sandworm was a ancient creature that lived, say, like what, in Alabasta or some other place that has a lot of sand. Because that is a logical conclusion, especially seeing as how, based on the abilities that he has had so far, they haven't been ridiculous. They've all been very grounded in the realm of possibility for a worm with a big mouth to be able to do. Like, I could believe that there was a big worm out there in the ancient world at some point that had great inhaling power. That doesn't seem too ridiculous for One Piece, especially when you got guys like Sasaki and King who are turning themselves into helicopters and making their necks become like sniper rifles and all this nonsense that we see in Wano. So a worm that inhales seems very pedestrian compared to the stuff we've seen out of Kaido and the boys. It's weird. And then, of course, the regeneration. One, that could be just an ancient Zoan thing, because I could believe, two, they have maybe like a step above the practical regeneration that I guess the ogreish awakened Zoans have, like Minotauros and Minozebra back in Impel Down. I could believe it's just an elevated version of that because he is awakened. Or it just could be because he's a worm, and worms have the ability to regenerate, you know? It could just be that. So either way, he seems too practical to be a mythical Zoan, because even if you look at how Saturn regenerates, he's kind of like ethereal in the way he does it, as if he's made out of some other material and the bits just kind of fold back together like a weird puzzle or something like that. We'll have to see how they do it in the anime, but that's how it looked in the manga. But yeah, Jupiter, very practical. So I could believe Hanafuda, getting back to him, is the father of Page One and Ulti. So it was their birthright to get the ancient Zoas that probably Kaido kept for Hanafuda as a, I guess, sort of a like memento, seeing as how he fell in battle against Ace. Which this is implying that perhaps Ace killed him, or he faked his death. Because based on what it says here, it seems as though he has some sort of plot that he's scheming towards as to why he needs so many ancient Zoans. So that implies that he could still be alive. Perhaps some of the remnants of the Beast Pirates will join him if he is still alive. Who's to say? We have to find out. So either he's dead or presumed dead, he's hiding in the background. Because beat doesn't necessarily mean kill. So that's a bit of a gray area. And I wonder, was he just under the impression that his children would be safer with Kaido than with whatever he's plotting? I don't know. But moving on. Fujitora has a Metal Gray blade. It is called Yakuza Firing Line, which is, that's the name, all right. It's a Cade sword, like what Brook has. And it's made in Wano. So we're never getting out of Wano, boys. Never. Wano is as prominent as Thriller Bark, which is funny because we first find out what Samurai are technically in Thriller Bark. So yeah, they're linked, and we're not going to get out of any of them anytime soon. And it was made by a guy called Fugetsu Kishiburo. So that's another guy like the guy who made the Kitetsu blades. So he's another swordsmith like him. That's cool. That's cool. I like that. Now, here's a thing that I've been talking about for about a year. Okay. We have a question related to Shiki, and we're going to get into something real quick. So apparently, Shiki was not supposed to have the float fruit. And yet again, Oda brings up how he doesn't like to give characters flying abilities. So how it went was Shiki had the ability in the movie. So now that has to double back on him having the ability in the manga. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what was said. Okay. Now, seeing as how he's talking about the significance of Shiki having a flying fruit, let's go back to that one pale statement about there being 5 flying fruits. I think we are at the quota because I was really on the fence as to whether Shiki's fruit counted in that. And I think it does, because it could have easily counted for just Zoid fruits, seeing as how a Zoid with a flying fruit was talking about that. But this is how I think it goes, okay? Pell says there are supposed to be 5 of them. How it goes is that the one flying fruit that doesn't have any weird stipulations on it is Shiki's fruit, the flow fruit. So keep that in mind. When you're talking about Zoans, it's not about individual fruits. And I've said this before. It's not about individual fruits. It's about what family of fruits grant the power of the ability of flight as a baseline. So that would be the bird fruit family, because you have bird fruits that grant flight as a base ability. So that's one. You would have the horse fruit family, which now contain the normal horse fruit and the horse fruit model Pegasus, of which Stronger has. Out the gate, horse fruit model Pegasus grants flight. Then you have the dragon fruit family. We just talked about that with Hanafuda. But the dragon fruit family has King's fruit, dragon fruit model Pterodon, and that's a fruit that allows him to fly. Now, a lot of people have said that King can fly without it. I think that's that weird log jump stuff they do in the anime. I don't think he can actually fly, because we never see him beat his wings and fly. And I think there's a statement by Zoro that, oh, he needs that fruit to fly or something like that. I don't think he can actually fly. I don't think adult Lunarius can fly, because if so, he wouldn't be given a fruit that gives him the power of flight. That seems really redundant. Why would you give a bird fruit? You kind of see what I'm saying? Okay, that's 3. And then the 4th one would be the bug fruits, like the fruits that the Totata have. One allows, I forget, his name is slipping my mind in a moment. One allows him to turn into a rhinoceros beetle who can fly. The other allows the female Totata to turn into a Japanese hornet, which can also fly. And then the 5th one, of course, like I mentioned at the start, is the flow fruit, because that allows the user to fly. So with all that being said, those are the 5 flying fruits. Now, what would break this? What would break it is if there is a canonical, real bat fruit. Right now, there is only a bat fruit that exists in a video game. Patrick Redfield has it. With that being said, this kind of falls onto Stussy, but like I have said in the past, check out those Stussy videos, by the way. But like I have said in the past, when it comes to Stussy most likely has an artificial Zoid fruit, because I think her fruit is the fruit that we see in chapter 1072, which means that is a particularly rare fruit that's not like anything we've seen in the series, because it has the traits of both a artificial devil fruit and a normal devil fruit, because it has the curly stem of an actual devil fruit and the circles of an artificial devil fruit, like a smile fruit. So, with that being said, it kind of stands alone in being that, which in that case, as you know, based on how smile fruits are made, they're made from taking the lineage factor from actual animals. So with that being the case, no smile fruit counts towards the flying fruit count, because I know we already have a smile user who's called Batman, and he has a bat smile Zoan. And seeing as how he is a smile user, he wouldn't count towards the 5 flying devil fruit count. With that being said, moving on. So now we have to talk about the line of empresses from Amazon Lily, because there was a question stating that they thought the person that Oda was referring to when he had Glorissa say that the empress from 2 years ago had passed, he thought that was Shakuyaku, or Shaki, the woman in Saboti who works in a bar and who's good friends with Rayleigh, right? That was the initial thought. Oda said this is not true. So the line goes like this. You have Glorissa, former Rocks pirate, and I guess the mother or adoptive mother of Boa Hancock, Cedrisonia, and Marigold, right? You have her. Then you have Shaki, or Shakuyaku, who we don't know too much about, but she is in the bar currently in Saboti Archipelago with Rayleigh. Okay. Then you have the missing one who supposedly died of love sickness, and her name is Toritoma. which I looked it up at Google Translate. That translates to birds and demons. I don't know if that tracks, but I found that interesting. And then, of course, you have Boa Hancock. Now, going back to Toritoma, I could believe if all these Croco mom or Croco female theories turn out to be true, I could believe this is her. Because the reason why I say that, I made many shorts about this in the past, but it is very peculiar that the animals in Baroque works match up with the animals on Amazon Lily. Because in Baroque works, there are a ton, and I mean a ton, of reptiles. There are turtles. There are two types of banana one. You got the express one, and then of course you got the big one. And then of course you have the messenger lizards. So it's weird that he has all these reptiles on his person all the time. I find that extraordinarily odd, and I wonder if that means anything. Not only that, and this is a bit of a kicker, Crocodile has two other animals who aren't reptiles in the Unluckies, and they are a otter and a vulture. So a mammal and a bird. The Kuja pirates have a hawk and a panther. So again, we have a bird and a mammal. I find that extraordinarily interesting. Because why? Why is that? You kind of see what I mean? Why do both of these groups have a bird and a mammal just randomly? And then all the reptiles on top of that. He doesn't use any reptiles as weapons. That is true. But he uses them for everything else. So I don't know. That's very interesting. We'll have to wait and see. But I think die from love sickness could just be a rumor, and the truth of the matter is that Toritoma became Crocodile. Because the funny thing about the name Crocodile is that it sounds like an alias, and then if you look at all the other warlords, all of them have proper names. Because okay, you have Bartholomew Kuma, that's a proper name. Boa Hancock, Gecko Moria, Trafalgar D. Water Law, Edward Weevil, okay, relating him back to Whitebeard. And then you have Don Quixote do Flamingo. The only odd one out is Jimbei, but that kind of fits the Fishman theming because it kind of goes on and off with Fishman. So I really want to count Jimbei. But Crocodile is weird because Crocodile is a human, and yet he only has one name, where the rest of the other human warlords have full names. It's very odd. It's odd. So that's why I think the term Crocodile is just an alias for something else. It has to be. Because it doesn't make sense for Crocodile to just be called Crocodile, with all the other warlords apart from Jimbei having full-fledged names. Even like what, Marshall DT, that's another one, because he was a warlord at one point. Yeah, it's weird. It's very weird. Even maybe you could say Buggy, right? But Buggy, I think more is going to be found out about his lineage, so I wouldn't keep Buggy as a sticky point against this theory. Because Buggy, too, is probably named something else, or there's more to his name. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's something more to that. To be fair, we have seen Crocodile as a child, and he wasn't dressed up in the typical Amazon Lily garb. But that doesn't necessarily mean he wasn't taken to Amazon Lily if he was a girl as a child. Just saying. It gets a little sticky when you talk about characters' childhoods, because we don't know if they were here at one point and then displaced only to return there, then displaced again, etc., etc. So on that, I don't really know. But it's just something to keep in mind. Though it could be another character entirely. Who's to say, but I'm sure we'll find out in the future. Following that, we have a bit about the CP9. And this is a bit weird. So the question is, how did the CP9 bros become CP0 agents? So after the events of Enies Lobby and after the CP9 cover story in which Lucy is in the hospital and the bros perform weird circus acts out on the street and they clean roofs and all that, to raise money for his surgery. After all that, they go off the train. However, when that was happening, Spandine, Spandim's father, supposedly has so much pull that he got his son promoted to be the chief of CP0. How in the world does that happen? And I was wondering about that too, because Spandim wears a mask all the time. And then that mask becomes white when he becomes a CP0 agent. We see him in Dressrosa. So I don't know why he's allowed to still wear a mask, because that seems to be a thing in CP0. If you wear a mask, you're a top tier agent. So that's weird in itself. But moving on, Lucy and the boys found out about an invasion crime plot that involved a big shot in the underworld who was a former member of level 6 in Impel Down, so he escaped when Luffy set those bros free, or that could have been because of Blackbeard, because Blackbeard was recruiting in level 6, so maybe he let all the guys who lost free, much like how Douglas Bullet, Patrick Redfield, and all these kind of weird limbo canon characters got free, but I digress. They found out a plot between this underworld big shot and Spandine, right? And then crushed the whole plan. And then from that point forward, all the CP9 bros got reinstated and upgraded to CP0, and Spandem became Lucy's underling. Okay, about this. Like I've been telling you about Stussy, right? Stussy is so interesting here because now the CP9 canonically have been involved with an underworld crime boss. Like I said in the Lookout Stussy video, the underworld is such an underdeveloped part of One Piece that we're going to have a character introduce us to all the underground workings of how this big crime network works, because it's become such a big part in so many arcs in this narrative that I can't even fathom that we're just going to skip over it. That's what I'm saying. She is like Robin, and that she's going to introduce us to this part of One Piece, because of course, as you know, she is an emperor. And not only is she an emperor, she's also a member, or a former member now, of CP0. So it's weird that now we have someone who has worked for both, who has been in both sections of the world with this. She's been a CP0 member, and she's been an underworld emperor. So she's a very, very enriched character. She's very much in the know. So in order to get more information about that, she has to become a main character. And it's just weird that the boys became CP0 agents after finding out about a colleague of hers. And yet she was, I guess, working as a triple agent for both the world government and then again for Vegapunk while working as an emperor in the underworld. So yeah, I'm just saying this to say she's got to become a main character. Batcoin is going to skyrocket because there's too much on the table to just excuse her or to just snuff her out. I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. But continuing on with our Cipher Pol talk, apparently Alpha is the little sister of Khalifa. Oh my word. You know who I thought Alpha was? The weird blonde woman that's making Iceberg very uncomfortable during his assistant audition. That's who I thought that was. I thought that was her after the fact undercover. It still might be, but the fact that she's Khalifa's sister is super interesting because now all three women, supposedly, if Bonnie joins, all three women have met a member of this family because Khalifa and Alpha's father, Lasky, was at O'Hara. So Robin has seen him. Then we have Nami, who knocked out Khalifa during NS Lobby. And of course, we have Alpha, who was knocked out by Bonnie during Bonnie's voyage out into the world. So that is super funny that each female member of the crew now, supposedly, if Bonnie joins, which I think she will, but it's very funny that all three of our female Straw Hats have met a member of this family. I find that so funny, bruh. I hope we get to see a family reunion between these three. if Laxy's not dead. I don't think Laxy is dead, though. I don't think he's dead. He had a cool design, too. A cool old guy with tinted glasses. Looked really cool. Now I feel a bit silly because Alpha, Khalifa, they both end the same way, and they both have like a F sound. Alpha, Khalifa. I think in some translations, Khalifa's name is actually spelled with a PH, even though it's with an F. But yeah, no, that's super interesting, bruh. Another interesting thing talking about Kuma is that Kuma can only send people places that he's personally been. So where did he go to Amazon Lily? Because he sent Luffy to Amazon Lily. So he has to have been at Amazon Lily at some point. The rest of the places we see in the flashback. Now, apparently, in chapter 1072, it is said by Bonnie that, and I didn't see this, but apparently it said there that when Bonnie de-ages someone, like a living thing, it's not permanent, which I came to that conclusion super early, just based on how broken that would be and how people seem to just revert back to their normal states without her having anything to do with it. So yeah, I don't know if the time is on that, but I figured that was the case. So when she ages, a object is permanent, which I guess too kind of defeats all those theories about how Bonnie would go back and reverse Momonosuke's age up. So in a way, Bonnie is like how most devil fruit relationships are in One Piece, because much like how AP5 is stronger than Daz Bones in terms of devil fruit because the arms fruit is said to be at a higher hierarchy than the dice fruit. The difference here is that the dice fruit seems to have just a second nature when it comes to cutting things. Daz doesn't seem to bother at all to cut things very intricately without much effort, whereas the arms fruit is just a big arsenal. There's no particular specialty with any one type of weapon. It's just all the weapons. So here is a similar case between the ripe fruit and the age fruit. The ripe fruit, as the name implies, can just make things older. It only goes one way for everything. Whereas the age fruit is presented as something that can change you from being younger to being older, but it's more of like the possibility fruit that can bring in any possibility imaginable to the forefront, which is wild. So in exchange for power, you lose permanence. And with Shinobu, in exchange for power, you gain permanence. So that's an interesting relationship. I would still say the age fruit is more powerful simply because of all of what it can do. And it can do some ridiculous things like turn the user into Nika if they believe in Nika hard enough, which is wild. But yeah, very interesting, very cool. The last bit that is just straight up funny is that the reason why Marcus Mars is standing at all the Gorosei meetings is because he doesn't prepare his homework. So he stands as a form of punishment. That's funny. It's also funny that he's the only bird in the group, and yet he never gets to roost. Simply hilarious. And last but not least, Vega Cola has ashwagandha in it and ginkgo leaf extract that makes you think of a ton of ideas and makes your brain go super active. So that's cool. That's cool. Vega Cola is a healthy cola. Hopefully Sanji can make some, so perhaps Frankie can get a power up in that way, which will be funny. Great SBS filled with a ton of information. One of the better ones we've had in a while. I always love doing these. They're always great. But yeah, give me